Bobby?
Yes. Elaine, how are you?
Pretty good.
That's great. We are live at PFRN Radio, and we got a chat room just full of people. We have interactive chat here too, Elaine. So they can ask questions and do these things later on.
Good.
Anyway, yeah, we're really excited about having you on the program tonight. I'm going to give it a really quick bio, and then we'll go right into it. Our guest tonight, of course, is Elaine Douglas, and she has been a UFO investigator for over 30 years, and her area of interest is in understanding the objectives of ET presence on Earth, as well as the nature of the U.S. government's response to that presence. She was a member of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, for 25 years as state director of Washington, D.C. and Utah. And in 1990, she was the organizer of the Operation Right to Know organization, which held street demonstrations at the White House, the Washington Post, and elsewhere, protesting UFO secrecy. In 2005, in a paper presented at the MUFON Symposium, Elaine used video evidence to prove UFOs and visibility is a reality. Elaine has investigated many sighting reports, but early on she turned her attention to the abduction cases. And 5 years ago she founded the JAR, which is a Journal of Abduction Encounter Research, an email magazine which published 9 issues. In 3 experimentations, I lost my paper here. In 3 articles in JAR, Elaine described abduction cases suggesting joint U.S. ET activity and experimentation on unwitting U.S. citizens. Elaine is a veteran of many radio and TV appearances. Notably, in 1993, she was interviewed on CNN, and in 2012, she was a guest on the Jesse Ventura Show and interviewed on her contention of Robert Bigelow, an intelligent asset operating in the UFO research community. And in 2013, Elaine presented the most recent contention that multiple reports of U.S. citizens victimized by psychotronic weapons, that I'm very interested in, represented efforts by the U.S. intelligence agencies to test and deploy mind control technologies derived from ET abductions. Boy, you have quite a bio there.
Well, you can see from that, Bobby, that I'm an inveterate UFO researcher.
Right.
You know, years ago I wanted to be a newspaper reporter, and of course as a newspaper reporter you always want the big story. And so I didn't become a newspaper reporter, but I did find the big story. And the big story is UFOs. I don't know, unfortunately, I guess you'd say unfortunately. Nobody wants to hear that story. But it sure is real.
Well, it certainly is. I know that on Project Freedom Radio we have so many different people that we've interviewed, and you certainly can't turn ahead and say there's nothing to it. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, that is for sure. You told me, Bobby, you told me that you're interested in the ranch.
Yes, the Skinwalker Ranch. Yes.
The Skinwalker Ranch, which is a point of departure for me. The Skinwalker Ranch is a property in Utah, in the northeast Utah, in a rural area where for a long time there's been extraordinary phenomena unfolding on the ranch. And it was owned by a person that's called Gorman, his last name, he and his family. And they lived on the ranch and tried to ranch there and were assailed by so much extraordinary phenomena that they just practically fell apart. So they contacted Robert Bigelow and asked him, did he want to buy the ranch? Well, he's probably the only person in the world that would buy it, but he did. And so he's owned it ever since. And so we're trying to, some people are trying to figure out what he's doing on the ranch, but there was a book written called Hunt for the Skinwalker by two of Bigelow's sidekicks, Colm Kelleher and George Knapp, in which they discuss the phenomena on the ranch. Tell me, what do you know about the ranch, Bobby?
Well, I know that Robert Bigelow was involved in it, and I know that he's bought it. I'm not sure if he owns it right now, does he?
As far as I know, he still owns it.
He still owns it. Now, Robert Bigelow, of course, is a philanthropist. He owns a budget hotels, Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Studies he's also involved with. And he's a billionaire. And he has put up in space a space module of some kind.
According to Forbes, he's not quite a billionaire.
Okay.
Really not but he's probably worth close to $1 billion.
Right.
And he's a man he's 68 now.
Mm-hmm.
He went into real estate and made a considerable fortune from what everyone says. And in 1999, he founded Bigelow Aerospace. I think he had some aerospace going before that. Because apparently he has a lifelong dream of being in space.
Okay.
And, you said he's a philanthropist. I think a reasonable person would conclude that he's an intelligence asset operating in the UFO community on behalf of the UFO cover-up. Now, as a teenager, Robert Bigelow had some sort of an encounter with ETs. Nobody knows much about it besides that, but apparently this left a lasting impression on him. And you mentioned there that I was an abduction researcher. Well, that informs a lot of what I conclude about people. The abduction phenomena is one of the major activities of ETs that have been on this planet since the 1930s. And they pick up human beings and they start to deal with them. They usually pick them up from childhood. Now, the reason I bring that up just then is because it's not so typical that a person would have one encounter. In fact, it's not typical at all. So it's quite possible that Robert Bigelow's had a series of encounters. And one of the stories that I collected about Bigelow, because I did a lot of research on him and interviewed a lot of people, was this one. One day, some UFO researchers that had a project they wanted to get funded went to his place in Las Vegas to see him. And he appeared in a completely disheveled manner. Looked like he just got out of bed. I'm tempted to say he still had his pajamas on, but I don't know about exactly that detail. But he's a person who's always meticulously groomed, but yet he appeared with these people, conversed with them, looking like he just got out of bed. So then after a while he says, just sit tight here, I'll be back. So he takes off and he comes back in something like a half an hour. He's meticulously groomed now. And he says to him, well, let's have lunch. Okay. But the thing is, Bobby, they'd already had lunch. They'd already had lunch with him when he was in his pajamas. So he obviously did not remember that. And that, of course, is completely abnormal behavior. And, you know, there's two possibilities. I guess he was taking a drug or he was in an altered state.
Right.
See? Because if he is an abductee, then, like I said before, he's going to be dealt with periodically. They're going to swoop down on him periodically, and they're going to put him in an altered state. And he may do things just like he just did. I mean, completely out of character, appearing in his pajamas, disheveled and all that. And he comes back, let's have lunch. So you see, he's got his own internal driver with this UFO stuff now. And probably because of that, he develops this dream in his early life that he wants to go into space, but he's no good at math, and he's no scientist. So he goes and studies real estate, and he works for almost 30 years. Amasses a fortune. You know, and then in the 1990s.
Go ahead. Whoop. Did we lose her?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Good. In the 1990s, he remakes himself. And he may have had some precursor aerospace companies, but in 1999, he opened Bigelow Aerospace. Now that is a would-be commercial space venture. In other words, one of his business now is to put up, he's already put up a couple objects into space. But he wants them up as hotels in space. And working space for scientific groups.
Right. Okay.
Right?
No,
so that's his overt life, partly over, not completely. But now in the meantime, what's he doing? Well, the earliest I have on him, have you heard of Robert Lazar?
Yes, I have. Right.
Okay, so Robert Lazar in 1998 was interviewed by George Knapp.
Okay.
I mentioned earlier George Knapp is one of Bigelow's sidekicks.
Right.
And so in 89, Knapp brings out Lazar to the television audience in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And Lazar tells his tale that he worked at Area 51 on alien craft that they had there, that they probably still have there. And so we have here a notation that Robert Bigelow got in with Lazar, and they started a company. I don't think it lasted very long, probably didn't go anywhere. One of the things, it's called Zeta Reticuli 1. But that's his earliest that I have in 1989, that he's now penetrating the UFO community.
And
when I say the UFO, yeah.
How do you mean penetrating the UFO community? Do you mean something like MUFON?
Well, that was MUFON is one of his latest penetrations, but I'm trying to take it back to his earliest. See, because I want to show you that he's been doing this for a long time.
I see.
And I don't know what happened with Lazar, but I know that Lazar is a very important figure, and Bigelow swooped down on him. You see, my contention is, basically, about Bigelow, is that he accepts assignments, shall we say, from the government. And we have to understand a few things to understand. We have to understand UFOs are real. And they're the biggest national security issue imaginable. UFOs operate all over the planet at will. They go all over the sky, they're underground, they come in and out of the water, they pick up thousands of private citizens. All right? They stand over nuclear weapons facilities and turn on our nuclear missiles on and off. Okay. And so they are here. And the U.S. government has known this, known their nature, known their ET since 1947, or maybe even earlier. But it is something that we have a bureaucracy that deals with it. We call it, for lack of a better name, we call it the UFO cover-up.
Right.
The UFO cover-up is the deepest part of the deep state in this country. It is the very core, the very bottom of the deep state. And it operates, well, it's been very, we don't know, certainly don't know the extent of all they're doing. But if you just look at their overt accomplishment, the UFO cover-up has managed to keep, and the UFO issue, which is as palpable as the nose on your face. I mean, 500 reports per month come into MUFON. Mm. And yet, for 70 years, the subject of UFOs has remained fringe. I mean, one of the reasons that UFO researchers are so vulnerable to a person like Bigelow, because they're all broke.
Right.
There's nobody, there's nobody in the UFO research community who has any money. Mm-hmm. And that's because nobody with anything, any pretensions, any reputation to defend would dare set foot in the UFO community. And that is a measure of how successful the public relations activities of the UFO cover-up have been. That this is a taboo subject. It won't be dealt with by anybody legitimate in science or the universities. And the press just touches it every once in a while and then drops it like a hot potato. So anybody who's in this field is a nut job by definition. All right? And for 70 years, they've managed to keep this in this status, which is a tremendous accomplishment. My hat's off to the UFO cover-up, whoever they are. Now, let's see. Where are we? We're talking about Bigelow. Okay, so the only people in the United States who, however, have not been, who do not believe that UFOs are crazy is the UFO research community, which consists of probably worldwide about 50,000 people. Consists of researchers and witnesses. There's a lot of people in the UFO community who are witnesses, who have seen a UFO or who are abductees. And they know the reality of the phenomena, and they become, people who have this knowledge become kind of desperate. We're all kind of desperate about it because it's the most revolutionary development in human history.
Well, do you know what
and yet we can't get it on. Yeah.
You know what I find absolutely fascinating, Elaine, is the fact that up until 8 years ago, I retired 8 years ago from law, and if I walked into a courtroom and I had 5 witnesses to somebody stealing something, that person went down.
You'd get a conviction.
A conviction
right.
like you wouldn't believe. Yet we got 15,000 people and nobody believes it. Well, I just find it fascinating.
Right. Right. It's really a remarkable thing. And what it's based on is the profoundly radical implications of what is being maintained. What we're saying is happening here. And there are parallels. The 911 critique of 911, that it was an inside job. The critique of the JFK assassination.
Right.
Excuse me. that was accomplished by the CIA and not by a lone assassin. These contentions UFOs are the most radical of those three, but these contentions are so radical, they're so profound that people just can't deal with it. All right, they just can't deal with it. So out comes the government and says, "Don't worry, there's nothing here to see. Keep moving." And people say, "You know what? I think I will." You see, so that is what is happening in all three of those areas, and so forth and so on. Now, you had a question for me?
No, I didn't. John, was there anything in there?
Yeah, CD's asking, what are some of Elaine's experiences on Skinwalker Ranch?
No, I've never been to the ranch.
Oh.
I'm a student of the ranch. There are people who have been there, and then, of course, if you want to read, the nuts and bolts of the furiously insane events on the ranch, just pick up Hunt for the Skinwalker. It tells all about it.
Right.
Doesn't really, so it's no job, but it does give you the livid events. And you see, I'm myself here. I'm trying to interest people in understanding what is operandi of this individual, Robert Bigelow, and how he works for the government in part, and exploits the UFO community. We are the people, see, who are on the front lines. We are the people. I'm not an abductee myself, but we are the people who contend with the phenomenon in real life. We are the ones who have to worry about whether when we go to bed at night, we're going to wake up and find an ET standing by the bed who'll float us out the window and take us up to the spaceship and show us all the babies they've made from our sperm and eggs and other very objectionable things like that. But, see, since none of it officially happened, then we're alone.
Right.
We, the people, are alone with this. We have no help from the government. We have no help from anyone. And that is an identification that I make. I mean, when I made those demonstrations, I wasn't the only one who made them, but the demonstrations we had in the 1990s about UFO secrecy, what I'm seeing here is that there's titans warring. There's the ETs and there's our government, if you can call our government a titan with respect to the ETs. But they're warring. They're carrying on a secret war. If that's, it's a kind of a war like the Cold War. And in the meantime, we're not at the table. See, we don't have a seat at the table. All we have is the UFO community. That's all we have. And it's supposed to be ours, and it's supposed to be our intelligence agency, and it's supposed to report to us and tell us at least what's going on. It's not supposed to be something that is drained by the U.S. government and controlled and exploited by the U.S. government, although I'm not surprised.
Right.
See, so when a Bigelow comes into our community like he does, I take great umbrage with it. Now, let's go to 1991.
Okay.
A lot of people have heard about the Roper poll. Bud Hopkins and Dave Jacobs, two leading abduction investigators, had a lead role in organizing the Roper poll, which was a nationwide poll, to try to figure out how many people were affected by the UFO phenomena, and particularly trying to figure out how many people had been abducted. But the person who funded the Roper poll was Robert Bigelow. Now, not many people know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, so he's done a lot of things that people don't know about. But, here's where he is. He's starting out on his space career. And, you see, he is operating in a milieu there in the NASA, the remnants of the NASA community, and trying to put together this I suppose I'm sure he hopes, profitable commercial space venture. And he's got to get government contracts, and he's got to get government, shall we say, favor. You know, he's got to be a person that the government looks upon as an asset, right, in order to prosper and be a player in his activities there. And what I think has happened is that he's developed a sideline, which is to be a front for the cover-up. I halfway think that the reason he funded the Roper poll was in a marketing document. To turn around and say to the government, look, 2% of Americans have been abducted. It says, I recall that's the entire population of Kansas or something like that. It's a lot of people. And this is what you're up against. He goes and tells the government, look at this. This is what you're up against. Don't you want to, you know, so what do we know now? What we know about the cover-up for a long time is they've been trying to identify who all the abductees are. And it's a big discussion about if they know who. I don't think they know who all the abductees are, but I believe that's certainly one of their objectives, is to find out who they are, and then they want to surveil them. And in parallel, I believe they started the MILABs, which are military abductions. These are situations where the government abducts the abductees and interrogates them and puts them under tests and, you know, does a lot of things, because what I assume the government wants to do is to find out what's going on with the abductions. Now, in the meantime, the government has a lot of already information about the abductions. And you said in your introduction that I contend that all these people now who are springing up all over the internet, the so-called TIs, the targeted individuals. I don't know if you've read on this, but there's more on the internet than you could ever possibly read.
Oh, I know.
Of people from all over the world who claim that they're being targeted from remote locations, and things are being done to them, like voices in their head. And this is more is getting to be known now. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
That more is getting to be known about. There's patents out. It's called voice to skull. These are new techniques. You see, you've heard of. I know I'm straying all over the place, but I'll bring it all together.
Yeah.
You've heard of MK Ultra. You've heard of the 1970s, where the government was testing LSD and everything.
Mm-hmm.
See, what I figure is that in around the 1950s, the U.S. government discovered the abductions. And they were probably appalled by it, as we all are. But what could they do about it, you know? And so instead they decided to study it. And I do think, I'll tell you why, I do think that they have been studying mind control for since the 50s. Our government, on our own, see, because they found out about the abductions. They found out what the mind control capabilities of the ETs are that they use on the abductees.
Okay.
And they said, holy cow, we have to get that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that these TIs, because, you know, when you read their stories and so on, it could be buried in there, and in some of the story is that they're really alien abductees. But there's so many of them and so on. They don't talk about ETs, you know, they don't seem to have any memory of it. That I do think that these TI people are actually the victims of U.S. intelligence agencies that are deploying mind control technologies that they copied from the abductions. Because if you look at as I have, you know, for decades now, as to what the abductees report is being done to them, and then you look at what the TI's report is being done to them, you can't tell the difference. You can't tell the difference. Except for the walking through walls and being carried off in the night. But the MyLabs, they carry them off in the night too. So, now where was I?
So we got
back to Bigelow.
Psychotronic weapons there, don't we?
I think so. Yeah. I really do. And I mean, you have to look at it realistically. If you were the government, you discovered this was being done, you would say, we got to do it too.
Yeah.
We have to understand that technology. See, about the cover-up, we always thought that, what they're interested in is the anti-gravity propulsion. How do you make the UFOs fly? Yeah, I'm sure they're interested in that. But in the meantime, they've got this other huge endeavor, which is to understand the mind control technologies that the ETs are using on the abductees. And I do believe that when we look around now and we see all these TIs being, having things inflicted on them for years, and you look at the range of things, and you look at the range of things with the abductees, and you see the lists are practically identical, then you've got to say that it's highly likely that the U.S. government has copied and is deploying the ET mind control technology.
And I wonder how far that's gone.
Well, it's gone pretty darn far because they're destroying the lives of these people. Mm-hmm. They're torturing them. They're inflicting pain and voices in the head. And, oh, dear, now I have to recite the symptoms. I don't have a list of them here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just, sleep deprivation and stalking and just a whole range of things. I wasn't thinking about this for our phone call of actually going into that, but you look at it and you say, oh, that's the same stuff the ETs do. And I know that a lot of people who are abductees think the ETs are the greatest things since sliced bread. But that's what they're supposed to think. That's what the ET's abduction program is designed to do. It's designed to convert the abductee to bonding with the ETs and championing their cause, however vaguely they understand it to be. And so I think that's why many of the abductees say, the ETs are wonderful people and they're doing all these wonderful things and so on. But, all right, now we got to get back to Bigelow.
Okay.
So Bigelow comes in, he's coming in 1991 and 1989. And he's on his overt is aerospace and his less overt is he becomes a philanthropist in the UFO community.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, he's a natural.
Right.
Because he's not saying UFOs are not real. He told the New York Times UFOs are real. It came out in the New York Times. He said they're real and they're very, very, very important. And if you looked at that Jesse Ventura show, he's got a picture of a gray right up there on his logo on his building in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I saw that. Wow.
So you have to be that to function in the UFO community.
Right.
So here he comes in with money. Now everybody thinks, here's the thing. Everybody thinks it's his own money. They think it's his money. But after a while, you're going to play an excerpt from a man who worked on the ranch as a guard who will tell us that he saw paperwork that his salary was paid by the NSA.
Right.
And that in 2010, he was hired in 2009 and he was fired in 2010. He says everybody on the project was fired. We were told we lost our contract. Say, we lost our contract. Now, if we were to fast forward here a little bit, what did Bigelow do with MUFON? Do you know what MUFON is, Bobby?
Yes, Mutual UFO Network.
Yeah, it's the biggest UFO organization.
Right.
He swooped down on them. It wasn't his first involvement with MUFON by any means. But that involvement, let's see, when was it? Maybe 6 years ago. He swooped down on them and said, you know, I've got a cool $650,000 for you guys. Here's what I want you to do. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And MUFON was just beside itself with joy. And they set up what they call a rapid response capability, which they'd been dreaming about for years. And Bigelow funded it. Problems started creeping up, though. One problem was that Bigelow was testy and I don't know if he was unreasonable, but yeah, he ended up being sufficiently discontented. He's always doing this. He starts companies and then he pulls the rug out. He starts efforts and then he comes in and he complains and says they're not working right, and he's going to end them now, which is what he ended up doing with MUFON. He paid half of the $650,000 it was supposed to pay, and then he just terminated the thing. Now, some of us think that he terminated it after he got enough ways of getting information and controlling MUFON. He didn't have to spend the rest of the money. He bribed people in MUFON. I mean, check that out, okay?
Yeah.
He bribed people in MUFON. And one of them, well, at least one, the one who spoke about it, didn't accept the bribe. But I mean, just any of that is just, obviously something's wrong here.
Right.
The other thing that started happening was cases started disappearing.
Right.
And I interviewed a fellow who was a dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
A dispatcher, his name was Joe D'Eduardo. He's a person who would sit on the computer for a shift. You know, they had enough money now. They paid people to have 2 8-hour shifts.
Right.
And the shifts were for monitoring the incoming cases, the potential STAR team. STAR team is the rapid response capability. And that was set up. And Joe D'Eduardo told me that many nights he would go to bed, he would get off at 11 o'clock, and he would see that cases had come in. And he said, well, there's nothing I can do about it overnight, so I'll take it up first thing in the morning. Well, next thing in the morning, those cases weren't there. All right? Now, a guy like the head of MUFON at that time, what was his name? It'll come to me. Says in radio interviews, he says very underminingly, he says, why would the government be interested in MUFON? You know, as though we were just a bunch of unwashed creatures of the deep. Why would the government be interested in MUFON? Well, I'll tell you why the government would be interested in MUFON. Because the U.S. government, the cover-up, would want, I mean, you have to use your head here. You know, some people say, well, they want to destroy MUFON. They don't want to destroy MUFON. MUFON is you see, our cover-up, no matter how many people they employ or all the tentacles they have everywhere, they don't have people on every street corner.
Right.
See, and our government needs to know what the UFO phenomenon is doing. I mean, just pretend you're a cover-up guy. You're in charge of this whole secret operation. Wouldn't one of the things you want to know be what the phenomenon is doing?
Right.
How it's manifesting to the American people?
Right.
You know, what are Americans seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the first thing they want from MUFON. And people would say, well, they could just hack into our computer. They don't need to really penetrate us at all. They just need to hack into our computer, and they'll see all of our cases. That's true.
Right.
But what else might the government want? Here's what they might want. They might want certain cases to disappear. Okay? Because there are certain kinds of cases that come in that are reported MUFON that I have to assume the government doesn't want propagated. Doesn't want known about, doesn't want investigated, doesn't want publicized. Those cases might be, there might be several reasons for that. They might be cases that actually involve an intelligence operation of some kind. See?
Don't you think that they were also collecting names, addresses, and...
Yes, I do. I do, because what MUFON did was they put up a legend on their front page that said, check this box. If you don't mind, if MUFON shares your name, address, phone number, email, and everything with third parties. Okay? Now, that was put up there, I know this, was put up there for the sole purpose of sending information to Bigelow. Because I mentioned earlier that I thought probably the U.S. government wants to know who all the abductees are.
Right.
I mean, again, I don't want to repeat myself, but to some extent you have to use your head. And when the director of MUFON said, why would the government be interested in MUFON for? What he's trying to do is shut off your thought processes there. Now, I don't know why he did that, because I don't think MUFON was really witting. I think they were overawed by the money. But he's trying to shut off your thought process so you don't think clearly, and you don't feel empowered, and you don't feel important, and you don't realize that you have valuable information, which is all kinds of information on UFOs, trying to make you feel that you're not valuable. See, but if you don't succumb to a propaganda line like that, and you realize you have tons of information in MUFON that is of great interest. Okay, so one thing they want to know, what's being seen, how is the phenomena manifesting on, in Main Street, USA, all over the country. They want to know that. And then, what else do they want? See, because I said that if that's all they wanted, they could just tap our computers. But there's more, because they want certain cases to go away.
Right.
These are cases which, okay, I've got a list of reasons here, have good evidence for the reality of UFOs. They don't want any cases like that to get out. They, meaning the cover-up. Cases which might lead to publicity, lots of publicity. They don't want cases like that to get out. That cases that might be connected to an intelligence operation. And cases where they want to compromise. See, what would happen, what started to happen with MUFON's effort and the STAR team was that Chase Klutsky was one of the people in charge. She was the director of STAR team for a certain point.
Right.
She starts talking about cases that are compromised. Compromised means that before MUFON could get there, as fast as we were suddenly able to get around, somebody else had gotten there. There was one case where the ground was trashed. There were other cases where people would contact the witnesses and say, hello, we're MUFON. Tell us your story and don't tell anyone else. And that would be Bigelow, all right? That would be Bigelow's investigators. Because what he has as his investigators are former CIA and former FBI. All right? So they know how to intimidate. And it's just like years ago, if you got a good photo, somebody would come to your door and say, oh, the government would like to see your photo. We want to study it, and then we'll get it back to you. And then when you would go to get it back, they'd say, oh, I'm sorry, it's lost. It's these kinds of operations. So we have operations where, when I say there could be an intelligence operation, I mean that. Because I know people who are under surveillance by the ETs and by the government. and who have been taken by the ETs and handed over to the government. So I know that there are certain individuals who are being treated by both sides in a cooperative, I guess, activity. So you see, there's a great deal of this. So those are some of the reasons for penetrating MUFON. Now, MUFON was not the only penetration by any means. I mean, right there in Canada, for example, are you familiar with the name Brian Vike?
No, I'm not, actually.
Oh, well, Brian Vike is a fellow. I think a lot of your listeners will be familiar with him. Let's see, what was he called? He was Mr. Canada, Mr. UFO. He was the go-to guy in Canada for a long time, until about 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Bigelow bought Brian's website and all his records. All right? Now, take a guy like Peter Davenport. Peter Davenport is the head of the National UFO Reporting Center. It's a huge website with reports. Now, Peter doesn't investigate any cases. He just takes reports. He's been doing it for many years, and he's got lots and lots of reports. Now, in 1995, Bigelow swooped down on him and said this. Said, Robert, we're prepared to send a bunch of money over there to you. We really admire your operation. And, enough money to make you comfortable. But, and here's what we're going to need. We're going to take certain of your cases. And these cases, Robert, you're not going to be posting them. You're not going to be looking into them whatsoever. I'm just going to take these cases for myself, says Bigelow. And other than that, you just carry on as before, except that I'll give you a bunch of money. Now, Peter Davenport turned that offer down in 1995, but it seems to me a template for what Bigelow may have done with MUFON. See, now let's talk about the ranch, okay? The ranch was purchased by Bigelow in 1996. Now, let's see. Where do I start with the ranch? Well, I know. Why don't you play that excerpt?
Okay. We can do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll play that. This is from, what is it, Paracast, theparacast.com, and it's Chris Steinberg and Chris O'Brien are the hosts, and they were interviewing David Weatherly and Ryan Skinner, investigators of the Skinwalker Ranch, and they ended up interviewing a gentleman by the name of Chip, who was on security at the ranch from 2009 to 2010, and then he left because they said they lost their contract. Let's play that clip, and you be the judge of it. Let's see if I can get it up here. There we go. Takes a second for it to come in. And it's most of what Chip had to say about the rent. You'll find it very interesting about halfway through when he starts talking about who paid him. This is taking way too long to come in. A little bit of a technical glitch, but we'll get there.
I have faith in you, Bobby.
Yeah. I have no idea why that. Oh, here we are. Okay. I couldn't see it, but I see it coming. And it's just loading now, and I think here we go.
It's Gene and Chris. We've got Chip. He's a Sherman Ranch insider there, handling security, and has some things to tell. Of course, we can't release his real name. We also have David Weatherly and Ryan Skinner. We got more questions of Chip. We want to answer that one that you started in the last
Oh, yeah. The military people, they did come out. I can't remember the exact. I know one of them was a general, and there was 3 others, and there was a female, but I don't remember their ranks. I don't know their name. They didn't come out when I was actually out there. I heard it about some other guys. But I don't know what exactly happened. Nobody really was told what exactly happened, but there was an incident, and military people freaked out. They wanted to be escorted off the property immediately, so they left. I don't know what the incident was. I know they freaked out, every single one of them.
Freaked out in fear or what?
In fear. And they wanted to be escorted off the property immediately, which, with people being in the military, you do have training, so you're not just some average, Joe, like, scared of the boogeyman, can't come after me. So
we're talking about a military person freaking out. That's itself a bit of a freak out.
Multiple military people. It wasn't just one. It was multiple. So I don't know what they saw, but they saw something, and they weren't too happy about it and didn't want to be there anymore. So
the other question was regarding if there was a urine test ever done after researchers would have some sort of encounter. Another rumor that I came across.
Yes, they did a urine test to us. If we saw anything, if there was, take pictures and there was multiple orbs and we felt something like, a cold feeling or just like felt something different, like I was telling you about how we had to take pictures and see if there was the orbs in the pictures. Did that, it was in the report. They made you do a pee test. You had to pee in these little jars, and then you had to bring them back with you when you went back down. Back down after your 2-week stay, you had to bring it back down to Las Vegas, where they had their little lab, and they did I don't know what they did with it, but they did whatever with it. They did their thing with it.
Don't think they were making martinis.
I don't think so either. Which brings me to another thing. They also had some guys after they went to there were a few guys that went to the ranch, and then there was a few that hadn't been to the ranch yet. They sent the guys to pay for the trip to Reno on a weekend, paid for the facility to be open, and get brain scans on all the individuals.
You mean MRI?
MRI, yes. And they would not let you look at it. They said the only information you would get is if you have a brain tumor or something like threatening, wrong with your brain, then they'll give you some information on it. But
it seems peculiar that they would believe there was some reason to fear a brain tumor. So you're still alive, no brain tumor.
Well, you're almost no brain sort of biological connection to what's going on. That whatever they witness or experience makes some sort of physiological altercation to the witness. And just me theorizing, but that would be my guess. Either that or a drug test. One of the two.
Well, what did you think of this type of scientific interest in security personnel and others who were on the ranch? I mean, did you ever ask any questions? What do you think they were looking for?
What were they looking for? I don't know. Something not normal, something out of the norm, definitely. As far as, I don't know if I want to say paranormal, I don't know. But it was definitely something, and for military, those 4 high-ranking military people to be freaked out about something, for, them taking and paying over money to have MRIs done on their individuals' brains, that just, it's not like we were sick or anything. So why are you spending all this money? There's obviously something going on. It's almost like we were the guinea pigs. They were testing us. It's what it seems like. You know what I mean? Like they were examining us. Is what it feels like. Like we were the test dummies here. Like I don't know. Like if they have some new military thing they're using out there, and they wanted to see how it affects people. I don't know.
So are you suggesting here that maybe you were hired not so much to provide security, but to be a lab rat?
Exactly. Exactly.
Did they do similar experiments on or tests on the dogs?
What's that?
Do you know if they did similar tests on the dogs that you guys carried?
No, not while I was there. They didn't do any tests on the animals. You just had to take an animal with you, and if they acted weird or like I said, they laid down and stuff, then you start taking pictures. But other than that, they didn't do anything, to my knowledge, with the animals.
Well, at least they cared about the people, I hope.
Oh yeah.
But you don't know if anybody coming down with any illness or ailment as a result of this.
No, I don't know of anybody getting sick or having anything wrong with them, but it's just normal people don't just spend their money to send random individuals to get brain MRIs done and all this, and then pay somebody to sit at a ranch, and do all this stuff that you had us doing. It's just not normal.
So let me ask you a quick question here, just a quick question, Chip. And that is here, you were there for just a number of weeks, and that was it. Was that the intent to hire you for a short duration gig, and that's all?
Well, they got rid of everybody. They did a mass hire, and not just the guards. They hired investigators. They hired doctors. They had all sorts of like doctors. I mean, by like nuclear physics and all that. They had several people they hired. The building that they had in Las Vegas probably had about 50 to 60 people at the peak of their hiring.
Now, you're not saying, and I'm not going to ask you to be too specific, but roughly how many years ago was this?
2009.
Okay, so just 3 years ago.
2009, 2009 and 2010. They laid everybody off in 2010.
Did they give any reason or just say, that's it, you're finished, goodbye?
They said we lost our contract. And I actually saw some paperwork out at the office in Las Vegas there. They're actually under contract by the government. All of our pay, everything.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Which branch of government?
The NSA.
NSA.
Yeah.
Was covering paychecks and payroll for personnel monitoring.
This is what I've been forever.
All right, now, Chip, I'm going to ask you a really serious question here, and understand it's done because it's the kind of thing we have to ask, and that is, if we asked you to prove in some fashion, and it could be for our eyes only, for your eyes only, like the song, just for us to see, prove that you were actually employed by these people, would you be prepared to show that evidence?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe we can work that out and report back to our listeners.
Are you talking about by the NSA or by...
Whatever documentation you have that you can show us, in confidence, it's fine, to demonstrate that you actually work for the Sherman Ranch or...
Gene, let me cut to the chase here a little bit. We've already kind of gone through that whole thing, and based on my amateur opinion, he's already done that.
Okay, so you'll vouch for his statements about being employed by these people?
Employed, I don't know, but let's just put it this way. He wouldn't have been invited on the show unless he'd already established his bona fides and credentials.
We're talking to Chip, the Sherman Ranch insider. We have Ryan Skinner and David Weatherly with Gene and Chris. You're in. We have the Sherman Ranch insider. His name is Chip. And we have David Weatherly. We have Ryan Skinner. Any other questions of Chip?
David?
That was quite a bombshell that he dropped on us there. So
you're gobsmacked.
I'm a little bit speechless at the moment.
Yeah, that was news to me too, there, Chipper. Man, I have heard rumors over the years that there has been government involvement up there. To my knowledge, you're the first person to ever come forward and say, not only was there government involvement, but it was a particular non-such agency that was involved. Well, David, what do you think? I mean, a mass hiring and then a mass firing. Chip, I have a question for you. Did you hear about some sort of appearance of this dog man just up the road in Fort Duchesne? I think it was in the late fall of 2009, right about the time that you were involved up there.
Yes, I heard something about it. We didn't go out there. They had investigators that most of the time all they did was sit at their desk in Las Vegas and play, spades and solitaire. But anytime there was something that happened, they would go out and handle it. And they went out there and did it. But I don't know what came of it or anything. I just know they went out there. They took a bunch of pictures. They did a mold, like one of those plaster mold things. I didn't see it. I know they did it. That's about all I got from it. And
this was all related to the dogman sighting.
To the dogman sighting, yeah. They were all out there. And I know one other time there was another sighting. It wasn't out in Utah. It was actually out in New Mexico. There was some sighting of some light, and they all scrambled all the investigators and sent every single one of them out there that day that they found out about it. But they would only do it if they had multiple calls. Obviously, not just one person saying, hey, I saw this sheep cross the road. They're not just going to send everybody up there. But I guess they had multiple witnesses to this light or whatever they saw, and they sent all of the investigators out there. Usually they would only send two, but they sent all of them out there. They went and bought rental cars. They went and got rental cars and then drove out that night.
Where in New Mexico this was?
I'm not sure. It was over by Albuquerque, but it wasn't in Albuquerque. So I don't know the exact place, but I know it was over near Albuquerque is where they were going.
Well, so, I've got some questions from the Paracast forum. We have quite an elaborate group of very up-to-speed individuals that post at forum.theparacast.com. And as you can imagine, there's been quite a bit of interest in the show, and there's no way that we're going to be able to get to all the questions. But here's a question for you, David. Has anyone had the opportunity to speak with the Sherman family in recent years? And if so, have any of the family members experienced anything out of the ordinary since leaving the ranch? Now, you and I talked recently that Gwen Sherman is actually still in the area. Has she mentioned any sort of blowback, psychic or paranormal blowback about her experiences there? How's she doing?
Not that I've heard recently. Ryan might have some input on that since he's been up there in recent months. Have you heard anything about that, Ryan?
I have. Interestingly enough, I posed that exact question to her, and the answer was, since moving off the ranch, one of her concerns was that the phenomena would follow them. And my understanding and her response is that it has not. It's affected her. It's changed her family's life permanently. It's something they'll never forget. But my understanding is it is not something that has followed the family. It seems to be rooted at the ranch.
We're talking to the Sherman Ranch insider. His name is Chip, or at least that's the name he'll be known by on the show. We have David Weatherly and Ryan Skinner, both investigators, and Christopher O'Brien, who does lots of stuff, right, Chris?
I've been known to do a thing or two.
We've got some more questions.
Okay, are you still with us, Elaine?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you perfectly.
Good. So what'd you get out of that, Bobby?
Oh, I got an awful lot out of it. But what I'll tell you what we're going to do right now is take a quick break. Because it's past the top of the hour. And we'll give people a chance to get their popcorn and Coca-Cola or whatever they want to drink and take a little bit of a break. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes with Elaine Douglas here live on PFRN. Stay tuned. Okay, 5 minutes.
Big splash, I was taking a bath. Gracious, great balls of fire. A little love doesn't fall funny. You came along, woo, honey. I changed my mind, it's good and fine. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Come on, baby, oh, I shake, go along. Yes, I said, come on, baby, baby, you can't go wrong. We ain't faking, oh.
And we are live at Project Written Radio with Elaine Douglas. And yes, Elaine, it is very, very fascinating. I'm sure you're still with us.
I can hear you, Bobby.
Good. Yeah, what I was getting out of that was I found it very fascinating, the fact that Mr. Bigelow owns the Skinwalker Ranch, yet the NSA is involved in paying these people to do security for them.
Well, it's not clear they were doing security.
Are you with us? Lost her. Okay, I think we lost you for a minute.
You did. Can you hear me now?
Yep, yeah, we hear you now. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, they were being tested to see if there was any physiological impacts on them.
Right.
By the way, I'm an echo now. Okay, May's gone.
Okay.
But you see there that the contract was from NSA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you see, people think Bigelow spends his own money. But that's my point here, see, is he's not spending his own money. He's operating on behalf of.
Right.
Now, Dr. Roger Lear told me, I don't know if you know his name or not, but he told me that the contract with MUFON, the one that was supposed to be for $650 and ended up for $350,
right,
was an Air Force contract. See, and Bigelow said at the time, actually, that he had unseen backers. See, but here we have MUFON permitting a person with unseen backers to have full access to MUFON. And that was imprudent, to put it mildly. See, what I'm saying is that Bigelow is acting on behalf of the government in order, I suppose, to achieve two purposes. One, his own interest, and also to curry favor with the government. Because here's the thing. The government might want to interact with people. But they can't do it wearing their own name tags.
Yeah, true.
See, they can't come to you and say, well, we're with the FBI, because they can't do that, because officially the U.S. government has absolutely no interest in UFOs. And basically, Bigelow, I think, has contempt for UFO researchers. We're the product. His job is to get our information and put some of us out of business. I'll give you a couple examples. A leading crop circle researcher told me this story. See, what Bigelow does is he offers people jobs. He gives them jobs, or he either gives them a job or he says he might give them a job. So with this crop circle researcher, he invites them out to his Las Vegas offices, and he shows them an empty office and says, see, there's that could be yours.
I see.
That desk, that room, that office, that could be yours. Now, of course, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, because everything you do with Bigelow has a non-disclosure agreement attached to it. But so here's this crop circle researcher. He says, that office could be yours. And then he says, you think about it, and we'll pay you a visit out at your place. So what Bigelow does, he gets in his private airplane, and he flies with George Knapp, a guy named Peter Duff, someone told me he was no longer alive, and another person. And they go out to this researcher's offices. Now here's the scene. This researcher, this was at the time period was, do you remember the alien autopsy flap?
Oh, yeah.
You remember that? Remember how there was a film and it was supposed to be a real alien autopsy? Okay, so this researcher knew the guy, I forget his name, who put the alien autopsy film forward. He knew where the film was. He knew where the guy had hidden the film, and he knew where the guy was. He knew all about it. He knew everything. And so Bigelow lands at this man's office, and he says, here's the scene. He puts Peter Duff, or the other guy, across the room from the researcher. And this guy commences a stare. You know, the stare that kills goats?
Right.
Okay. He continuously and unabatedly and unremittingly, no blinking, nothing, starts staring at the researcher. Okay. Bigelow goes behind the researcher's shoulder and he says brightly, show me your database. Go ahead. Oh, I want to see it. I want to see your database. In the meantime, here's what's going on. George Knapp is wandering around the office, fingering this guy's files. He finds the file that he's looking for, which is the file from the guy who did the alien autopsy film. He opens the file, he reads the contents, he takes notes. This is one thing that's going on. The other thing is the other guy's staring unremittingly at the researcher. And Bigelow's standing over his shoulder saying, yeah, let's see that part of your research. Let's see this. Let's see the other thing. That was the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes on, I don't know, they're there a half hour or something. Then they leave. Then the next morning, Bigelow calls from the runway. You can hear the plane roaring in the background. He says, oh, by the way, researcher, we've decided that we won't be hiring you. We won't be needing your services.
Mm-hmm.
See, So here he's got this kind of total exploitation of the researcher. And it's amazing how the researcher doesn't jump up and run across the room and say, what are you doing with my file?
Well, it sounds like
he doesn't say, what, with this other guy, why are you staring at me like that? Like, stare that'll kill a goat.
right.
He's just discombobulated because, after all, Mr. Bigelow has shown up, the billionaire philanthropist from Las Vegas. He's intimidated. He's discombobulated. He doesn't snap. After they leave, he feels horrible, the researcher. He realizes what's happened.
Right.
See, they wanted the information about the guy with the alien autopsy film, and they knew this researcher had it. All right. So they literally rifle his files right in front of his face.
Wow.
And the guy staring at him unremittingly was probably in some kind of attempt to mind control him or hypnotize him or,
Right. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. And I mean, this kind of thing. Now, take another guy like Bruce Cornett. Bruce Cornett is a wonderful man. He's a PhD geologist or geophysicist and an abductee with terrible, tormenting things that have happened to him over the years. Bigelow says to him, I want to hire you. I'm going to hire you. And Bruce Cornett moves across the country and takes a job with Bigelow. This job lasts 4 months till he's abruptly fired, which happens all the time with Bigelow. There's nothing for him to do. Of course, he signs all the non-disclosure agreements. Bigelow tells him, well, if you write anything, it's my property while you're working for me. And here's what else happens. When he gets there, when he moves across country, he needs to buy a car. Bruce does.
Right.
And he goes to the dealership. Oh, there was somebody assigned to him. I forgot the name. A person was assigned to the researcher to help him get settled. So apparently he told the researcher what car dealership, what car he wanted. So he goes to the car dealership to maybe buy the car. And when he gets there, there's a salesman there. And the salesman is very solicitous and says, oh, you don't want that car. This is the car you want. You want this other car. And so Bruce Cornett buys the other car. But the thing is, this car was bugged. This car had a GPS on it, tracking device. And the next day, Bruce goes back to the car dealership to pay for the car or something. And he asks for the same salesman. And they say, we don't have anybody working here by that name. Now, I don't recall, it's in my notes, I don't recall how Bruce came to understand that the car had a GPS tracking device in it. I know it's in my notes, it's quite understandable, but I forgot exactly what that detail is. But, you see, and so Bruce works there for 4 months doing nothing. Like Chip on the tape was talking about the scientists are playing solitaire. This is government science. You don't know why you're there. You just do what they tell you to do and so on. But when you look at a case like Bruce Cornett, what was done to him, he's just cut loose at the end of 4 months. Sorry, we don't need you anymore. Goodbye.
Yeah, it sounds like MK Ultra type of stuff.
So what Bigelow does is he goes around, if there's a researcher that they have some interest in, then he insinuates himself with that researcher by either making false promises or actually hiring the person and gets the non-disclosure agreement. It just goes on and on. There's a man named John Edwards who lives out in New Mexico. He has a farm. It's a lot like the ranch. Right. It's full of phenomena. Bigelow sent 2 vans out there for 2 weeks, full of electronic equipment, interviewed him, did all kinds of tests all over the ranch, this other guy's ranch, John Edwards. You don't do that kind of thing unless somebody's paying for it.
Right.
So the Air Force paid for the MUFON contract. The NSA paid for what was going on at the ranch. And this is what Bigelow is. And, to me, he's not a philanthropist. He's an intelligence asset. I can't prove it. All I can say is he looks like an intelligence asset. He looks like an intelligence asset.
What do you think was going on at the ranch?
What's going on at the ranch is, now, this brings us to the question of the book they wrote.
Right.
The Hunt for the Skinwalker. It's a masterpiece. This book was written by Cole Kelleher and George Knapp. Hunt for the Skinwalker. The reason that this book is a masterpiece in fogging. These men, they know perfectly well what's going on at the ranch. The ranch is an alien manifestation. It's a manifestation of the alien, I don't know what to call it except a psyop. What I think is going on with these abductions, apart from the creation of hybrid beings, which is another phase of the abductions, but all the mind control that goes on with the abductions and stuff like what's going on is a way to come to understand the human being so as to understand what it will take to subdue this race. And they're not in a hurry. See, so the ranch, the ranch is to dazzle people and intimidate people with the feats, which are technological feats that the alien is capable of. And they are, believe me, impressive.
Well,
yes.
Does that include, I've looked at a little bit of the Skinwalker Ranch, and there's so many phenomena that's happening out there, such as the orbs and the manifestation of different wolves, so let's say, or creatures. And
yes, creatures.
We're getting into almost cryptozoology here, and of course,
these are machines, Bobby. These things they create, these are machines.
Okay.
But they're, amazingly, they're living. They're living machines. One time I did a paper on this, a big study of all the cross phenomena, because I wondered if they were just holograms. But some of the people that, the strange people that people have seen all over the world and so on, they've touched them physically. Or they've been close enough to see that they're actually physically living. And Bigfoot is another example of that. They're physically alive. Now, I don't know, that if you talk about like a wolf that was seen at the Skinwalker Ranch where you fire right at it from close range with a shotgun and the thing just keeps walking, that's a machine.
Yeah.
And what do you learn from, the net effect of the ranch is to show we've got stuff that is over your head, and we are over your head. We are strong and powerful, and you aren't. You humans are not strong and powerful. Chip said there was military brass out there, and they were so spooked that they wanted to get off the ranch right away. See, that's in the same category as UFOs poised over Mino Air Force Base, where they have the nuclear missiles, and the UFOs poised over there and turns the missiles on and off. See, people who are naive, they say, oh, the aliens are trying to send us a message to get rid of our nuclear weapons. Well, maybe so. But to my mind, they're trying to send us a message that, there's no point in you even thinking about even your most powerful weapons, your nuclear weapons, because we got, all we have to do is push a button, or we can turn them off. That's the message I get from it, you see. So the hunt for the Skinwalker. Now, in all these years that Bigelow's been funding the UFO phenomena, funding this one, that, what do we have? We have the Rover poll. We have a study that nobody can find anymore of black triangles showing that the black triangle routes were between military bases, suggesting that they were secret government aircraft.
You're talking about like the Phoenix Lights.
Well, Bigelow's outfit did a study of the black triangles.
Right.
And they charted all their, where they were when they were sighted. And they came to the conclusion that they were really government aircraft. Now, frankly, this is the kind of study that one government agency might fund to find out what another government agency is doing. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Because not everybody is in on the cover-up.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody there's many people in government in high positions, powerful people, who are not privy to the cover-up, but they know something is going on. And they might fund a study like that. And the third thing is the hunt for the Skinwalker. Now, the hunt for the Skinwalker, a book, as I said, by Kelleher and Knapp. And what I said about it is a fog job. And I said that these men know precisely what they're dealing with. They know they're dealing with an alien manifestation. But they don't say so in Hunt for the Skinwalker. What they do in Hunt for the Skinwalker is examine every crazy, wild hypothesis for what could be at the root of the phenomena at the ranch. They spend pages talking about maybe they are Civil War veterans who got up from their graves. Maybe they're the ones that are doing this. Maybe it's the Indian spirits that are doing it. And they go on and on and on with, 7, 8, 9, 10 different hypotheses. And they say, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's the other thing. And when you get finished with a book, you don't have a clue what it is. You're walking away from that, scratching your head and saying, gee, I wonder what's really going on at the Skinwalker Ranch. Okay? Now that is propaganda. See, what they're doing there is, Bigelow's got to put out something.
Mm-hmm.
He has to put something out to the UFO. He can't be all one way. He's got to publish something. So he publishes this Hunt for the Skinwalker, where he tells you, well, there's some things buried in there that are true, actually. But basically, if you think about the Indians and the dead soldiers and all these other dumb things that, you don't know what it is. See, so the point of the whole book is to make sure that you don't really understand it. Do you see?
Right.
Now, I'll tell you something. This guy called Kelleher, he's a PhD. He wrote another book before this book. That book is called Brain Trust: The Hidden Connection Between Mad Cow and Misdiagnosed Alzheimer's. It was published in 2004.
Wow.
Now that book is a broad indictment of the U.S. government saying that there are very dangerous organisms in our meat called prions, which if you eat one of them, you will get very sick and probably die. and they are in our meat, and the government doesn't want us to know about it, okay? Now, there is a ready audience for this kind of thing. This kind of indictment of the government. And you know yourself that there's millions of people who just lap up these books about what the government is doing to us. But here's the kicker, okay, about this other book, the book Brain Trust. He says, and oh, by the way, Colm Keller says, after telling you all about how the prions are in the meat and the government and this and that, he says, by the way, I think that the cattle mutilations are really the U.S., done by the U.S. government to get the meat and test it and see if there's any prions in it. Now, that is absurd. And not only has it been proven that the technology used in the cattle mutilations is beyond anything that's in the open, unclassified literature. Not only that, but the government doesn't need to go on people's ranches and steal their cattle and mutilate them and all to test the meat.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We have a Department of Agriculture that will do that if they wanted to do that. So, you see, the way I read that book, the book by Colm Kelleher, Brain Trust, Hidden Connection Between Mad Cow and Misdiagnosed Alzheimer's, is that the real purpose of that book was to drop the idea that the government is doing the cattle mutilations.
I see.
Because whoever paid for that book to be written, their point of view was, oh, the cattle mutilations, that's the aliens, and we're worried that the ranchers are going to really rise up in arms. You know, we need to diffuse this somehow. You know, and I don't say the book made a huge impact, but the point is, it's more propaganda. Now, let's look at a guy like John Alexander, who's another one of Bigelow's sidekicks.
Right.
John Alexander is a retired Air Force colonel who was involved with, let's see, well, he's famous for being involved in non-lethal weapons. When I think he worked with Stubblebine. So John Alexander wanders around with Bigelow. And if you see any pictures of him, you know, all the pictures they print of John Alexander are 30 years old, and he's in his full dress Air Force colonel uniform. His 30-year-old pictures. Now here's his latest book. I wish the heck I could remember the title of it. John Alexander, what the heck is the title of his book? A very recent book. It's got a lot of play, a lot of interviews and stuff like that. Here's his story. John Alexander says, you know what? He says, I got a lot of contacts. After all, I'm a former Air Force colonel. I got a lot of contacts, and I combed through the entire U.S. military and intelligence establishment. And I couldn't find a trace of the cover-up. I didn't uncover one single tiny little shred that told me that the U.S. government is witting about UFOs, has secret programs dealing. Not a bit. He says, so I reached the conclusion that the U.S. government isn't paying the slightest attention to UFOs. They just are oblivious. They don't even know about UFOs. And my feeling about UFOs, says John Alexander, is they're real. But I don't know what they are. And you know what else? They must not be important. Because as far as I can tell, and I have a lot of contacts, nobody in the U.S. government is paying the slightest attention to them. Now you see, That's total propaganda. And that's what the Bigelow operation is designed to, what they do is they have several missions. They're trying to neutralize some researchers. They're trying to control some information in the UFO community. They're trying to put out, they're trying to establish their bona fides. I mean, it's nauseating when you look around and see people that have dealt with Bigelow, or not that have dealt with him, but people like MUFON board. How they fawn over him. They're just a bunch of, oh, Mr. Bigelow this, Mr. Bigelow that. I have MUFON documents that say, from Wall Anders or somebody like that says, in my opinion, Robert Bigelow is the most ethical person I have ever met. So in other words, they're completely intimidated by him and overawed and turned into a bunch of sycophants. And I think that as far as the MUFON contract is concerned, the real Air Force contract, that the board of MUFON, see, James Carrion, who was the director at that time, then they finally eased him out, he writes, I told the MUFON board that I thought a government agency was behind BASS, BASS being the acronym for Bigelow's, one of his research organizations. I told them that I thought a government agency was behind it, and they wouldn't hear of it. So to me, in the meantime, there was a member of the MUFON board, John Schuessler, who got a security clearance and was working for Bigelow at the same time that the contract went down, which is a complete conflict of interest, and refused to answer anyone's questions in MUFON about it, and so on. And so I feel that what's going on with Robert Bigelow, people really need to be aware of it, is that he's pursuing his own internal drivers as well as currying favor. If he does enough favors for the U.S. cover-up, maybe that's his ticket to the inner sanctum, and maybe Bigelow Aerospace will be the one company that will invent anti-gravity. Do you understand what I mean by that? Invent anti-gravity?
Yeah.
In other words,
go ahead.
In other words, if they decide to commercialize anti-gravity, then somebody's got to invent it.
Right.
They can't be coming from aliens, for God's sakes.
Oh, God, no.
So maybe Bigelow will get to be the one to invent it. Mm-hmm. And lots of things like that he needs and wants for his business. So that's how I see him. And as for the ranch, it's a real phenomena, and that's the real story, of course, is who the ETs are and what the heck they're trying to do and things like that.
Right.
Go ahead. You got any questions for me?
Just there's so many different, they almost look paranormal, the stuff that's going on out there.
What does that mean, paranormal? What's the meaning of that?
I mean like apparitions, and I saw different videos. I don't know how much truth there is in them, but there was different of a 10-year-old boy or something running through the kitchen. I remember seeing that. And that looked to me like a paranormal experience. It was like a ghost that was running through, and they chased it into a shed or something, and it turned into a wolf or whatever.
Yes, so you see the ET technology, God knows how they do it, but they have tremendous capabilities, to put it mildly. I mean, on that radio program, at the end of it, one of the researchers tells a story about how he and a colleague were poised. They were like a mile from the ranch or something, and they were observing the ranch from a great distance. And they started seeing all the orbs. And then, finally, the orbs saw them. And all their footage just, evaporated off the camera, by the way. But the orbs, so couple of the orbs speed over to where they are.
Right.
and there's lights going on and off in the orb, and then all of a sudden there's a gray fog, a ball of dense gray fog, and then the fog just melts away, and there's a wolf standing there. Well, that's pretty amazing technology, but that's what it is.
Right.
It's technology. You know, it's not God, it's not an angel, it's not, you know, it's not a dead spirit, it's technology, it's alien technology, that's what it is. At least that's what I think it is. Other people have their views.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. It's they can make you see anything. That wolf, in fact, I think it got quite close to that gentleman. I don't know if it was David or Ryan, but it was in 5 feet, and it looked very solid. It wasn't, a holograph of any kind.
You mean the wolf that that fellow saw?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this, by the way, for listeners, this is not the same wolf that.
Oh, okay.
There's other wolves in the Skinwalker account. Right. One of them is the wolf that the family sees, right. And that wolf is the one they tried to shoot with a gun and couldn't kill it. Right. But this other wolf is the researcher, totally different group of researchers. This wolf materialized out of the gray fog. Another thing that you read in the Skinwalker book is they repeat over and over again that the strange phenomena at the ranch has been, quote, documented for 15 generations.
Wow.
Now, I really have a problem with a scientist writing a statement like that. You know, documented means that there are documents.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's referring to is the Indian legends.
Oh, the legends, okay.
Okay, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, well,
and he says, and he says documented for 15 generations. Well, you know, the reason for pushing this idea that the ET phenomena has been here forever. Okay, you find this all over the community in various forms. This has been going on for generations. This has been going on for thousands of years. This has been going on for hundreds of years. This has been going on for 15 generations. When you tell people that something has been going on for a long, long time, that diffuses the significance of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You see, it turns it, well, if we've been experiencing this for hundreds of years, well, if we've been experiencing this for thousands, then it must be benign.
Right.
You know, there must be nothing wrong with it. It must be a good thing or a harmless thing or not a thing to worry about, not a thing to see, because what it really is, what the Skinwalker Ranch is, look, everything that happens at the Skinwalker Ranch, which is concentrated there, you can look through the abduction literature and find all these kinds of phenomena scattered all over the place. Not continuous and not in one place, but in the lives of people who have been exposed to the phenomena are all kinds of miracles. All right. So what is happening at the Skinwalker Ranch is not any different than what the phenomena is doing all over the planet in smaller doses. And the terrorization is also not any different, because there's certain episodes in the UFO literature where a family has been terrorized. There's a famous episode from that in Kentucky, I think it is, or I can't remember the name of the incident. It was like 30 years ago, where something seems to land and then it all swarms over the house of these beings, and they're in the house and they start. It doesn't make any difference. You know, they shoot and the beings are unfazed, and the beings are crawling up on the roof, and they're hanging down from the windows, and they're banging on the doors, and this goes on for a day and a half. And you gotta ask, what are they trying to do? But all I can tell you is that it's, we try to find words. Words somehow tame things that we don't understand. They do, So I call that a psyops.
Okay, looks like my power's going down. I had to unturn my plug-in thing here. We've been running out of battery, so I'm sorry that we're going to have to let you go, Elaine.
Yeah, sure. That's all right. That's fine.
The premise of this was to bring someone on who give us some good substantial information, and you certainly have done that tonight.
Good.
It's been a pleasure and an honor
My
to have
pleasure.
you here. And we'll get in touch real soon.
My pleasure, Bobby. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.